I've never told this story before, how I went from being an insecure kid living in low-income housing to making 9 figures a year in revenue, getting my business number 21 on the Inc. 5000 list. Forbes called me a top 10 marketer in the world, and I've been able to help underprivileged kids by doing things like building schools from. I've never wanted to talk about this stuff because it feels like bragging. I've realized that explaining how I did all of this step by step without rich parents or any connections could be useful or at least inspiring to many of you who are interested in marketing, business, and entrepreneurship. But for me to teach you that, I have to start by taking you back to 1972, Uganda. In 1972, the president of Uganda ordered all of the Indian population, including my father, to leave the country.
Uganda will be independent after this, my decision, after I want to see that the whole Kampala street is not full of Indians. It must be proper black and administration in those shops is run by the Uganda.
Giving them 90 days to find somewhere else to go. This is crucial because I don't think you can achieve your greatest goals until you truly understand what your parents achieved before you. When my dad got kicked out of Uganda, he was able to go to the United Kingdom because they took him in. And eventually, he met my mom through an introduction by family members. My mom moved from India to the United Kingdom with my dad, and that's where my sister and I were born. And within a few years of me being born, we moved to sunny Southern California, because my mom didn't like the cold weather. During that time in the United Kingdom, my dad didn't have an amazing job, nor did my mom. He didn't have the opportunity to go to college because at that time, he needed to earn money to put food on the table. And when we came to America, we ended up moving into low-income housing. My parents didn't have enough money. Luckily, some of their family members helped out, but every month they were spending more money than they were making. I still remember when my mom would pick up pennies and dimes off the ground and to save up enough money to pay for tacos from Taco Bell. Now, by no means were my parents perfect angels, and you don't have to have parents who are perfect, but all their struggles, all the issues that they went to taught me that if you just keep pushing hard in life and you really try and you don't let anything get you down, you can actually get somewhere in life. Now, if you don't know your parents' life story, you should take an hour or two and just interview them or talk to them, because it allows you to understand their motivation, their commitment, and it'll help you figure out your true meaning that you need to create your own success. This brings me to the second step along this journey, which is growing up in low-income housing in California. There's something unique about America where you can really not have that much money at all, but also be exposed to wealth all the time. I didn't grow up with much money at all. My dad's first job, he got it from our uncle. And my aunt gave us an Oldsmobile, which we really loved, the velvet seats. And my mom was a teacher in India, but her credentials didn't transfer in America. So she took night college classes and she worked for a preschool for free for 6 months. She pushed me and my sister in a stroller because we only had one car, a few miles each way, and she worked for free each and every single day until they were willing to give her a job for money. And we finally saved up enough money to buy a house. None of my parents ever made more than $100,000 a year. But as a kid, I constantly saw other kids with Mercedes, or even watching TV, I would watch MTV Cribs and see people's fancy houses and their Ferraris. And it was so close, right? Being in Southern California, you see all these people in Los Angeles with tons of money. Now, this was important for me to see because it made me realize that there was another life I could have. I just did not have it right now. And I watched my parents become really scrappy. They saved every little penny. They wouldn't even eat out at Taco Bell or Subway that often because it cost money. And when they would get us Taco Bell, a lot of times it was for my sister and I, but not for themselves. And what I found was, if you can save money, be scrappy, and invest it wisely, you can end up having a better life over time. It just takes time. As an entrepreneur, a lot of people are looking for that gold at the very end, but they're looking for it right now. It's all the little things that you do in life that add up that'll help you get there. If you want to achieve that goal in the next year or 5 years or 10 years, and you just put a stamp and saying, I'm gonna get this in 10 years, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. What really matters is all the little things you do each and every single day, but if you take those little steps for granted, you won't achieve your goals. The next stage of my journey began when I realized that I'd never get rich enough if I didn't figure out how to stop trading time for money. When I was 16 years old, I was working at Knott's Berry Farm. I was making $5.75 an hour. And I would even clean restrooms and sweep up vomit because if you did that, you would get an extra 50 cents an hour. But at that time, My sister was working for an Oracle financial consultant. She was his assistant, and he was making more than $200 an hour. So I was going to monster.com and finding out the qualifications to become an Oracle financial consultant. I didn't even know what Oracle was at that time. I was taking AP and IB classes during high school, and I was even doing nighttime community college classes so that way I can graduate faster and become an Oracle financial consultant like my sister's boss was. But what I realized going through monster.com was I wasn't qualified to become an Oracle financial consultant. It required a college degree from at least a 4-year university, and you had to have all these Oracle certifications. I didn't want to wait. So when I was on this monster.com website, and I saw that this job board was making hundreds of millions of dollars, I realized that if I made 1% of what they made, I would be a rich kid. So I ended up going out there and decided to copy monster.com. I realized at this point, if your competitors are making a ton of money and they're in a large market, if you just make a fraction of what they make, you'll still do well. A lot of the richest people are often middlemen. They're not people who trade their time directly for money. They're the people who figure out how to build something that creates its own value. For example, with monster.com, they get paid every time a company posts a job. They're a middleman. And in essence, they're getting paid every time that happens without spending any time doing manual labor. This is also why many great entrepreneurs are a special form of lazy or impatient. It actually forces them to think of how to do something higher leverage and maximize input to output ratios. And this is exactly what led me to learning the importance of marketing. I saved up enough money from picking up trash at Knott's Berry Farm and cleaning restrooms to pay for someone to help me build a job board like monster.com. I paid someone $1,500 and it took a few months for it to go live. But once I launched that job board, no one came to the website. I assumed that people would just find out about it and they would just come. I was ignorant. I didn't understand the concept of marketing. So I found a marketing firm in Canada and I gave them every last penny that I had. They spent a lot of hours, but I got no results. I was frustrated and I was broke and I felt like I was at rock bottom. But instead of giving up, I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna learn marketing myself. There was really no YouTube at this time or online courses. I was just reading stuff online and experimenting. People think that if they can't acquire money, then they have nothing and you're stuck. But you can always acquire information and find a way to lift yourself out of being broke. And that's exactly what happened. My website went from 0 visitors to over 60,000 visitors a month in less than 6 months. Once I realized I had figured out a valuable skill, I started to build in public, and this is how my career really took off. I started even going out there and hitting up other websites in the space and begging them to link to my website. By doing all of this, I started ranking higher on Google. And funny enough, my nighttime college class was a public speech class, and my first speech was on how Google's algorithm works because that's what I was doing with my own website. And someone in that class was actually looking for someone like me. They worked at this power supply manufacturer and they introduced me to their boss, and I got my first contract making me $5,000 a month, all when I was just 16 years old. And that client referred me to another client, which in total caused me to get 3 more customers. So now I was making $20,000 a month using what I learned online to help a few companies get their website more traffic. But then I thought, hey, why should I just wait for other customers to refer me business? Why can't I go out there on my own and get clients as well? So every day after school, I would run home. I would go online to Google and I would call every single person that was paying for advertising. And I would be like, hey, you know how you're spending all this money on Google ads? What happens if I can get you this traffic for free? If I get you results, pay me. If I don't get you results, you don't have to pay me a single penny. And over time, my business started growing. So you know that $20,000 a month I was originally making? It grew to eventually $50,000 a month, then over $100,000 a month, and then to low millions a year. At that point, I sort of thought I had made it. But then I started to burn out from all the consulting I was doing. I was constantly working and realized I was right back to trading my time for money. So I decided to try my hand at software and made my 3rd attempt at starting a business. So the reason I started Crazy Egg was because we had a customer that was paying us for advertising at the time. They were spending millions of dollars a year in ads, but majority of their spend was being wasted. They were getting no ROI. So I thought, what if I created a tool that showed people what marketing efforts are making them money and what's not? Where are people getting stuck on their website and what they can fix so that way they can make more revenue. And when I started Crazy Egg, it was painful and slow in the early days. I didn't know much about coding. I had to hire people, and a lot of the people I hired failed. So then I had to go through quite a few people before I found the right person that could help us build the product that we wanted. Even once it was built, getting it off the ground, barely anyone was paying for it at the beginning. And the big thing I learned from this is if you start a business, yeah, you can get traction in your first month, your first year, even the first few years, but it really takes 3 years to start getting traction. It takes 5 years to have something that you're going to be proud of. And in 10 years, you'll have something that you would have never imagined. If I could go back in time and give my younger self advice, the one thing I would tell myself is to focus. Too many people, including me, have had ADD where we want to keep going from business after business after business instead of focusing. If you focus and put all your effort into just one thing and you're willing to give it 3, 4, 5, 10 years, sure, you'll get to millions in profit, but at the end of 10 years, you'll have a much bigger business as well. Right as Crazy Egg was starting to gain momentum, we started hearing about a bunch of guys investing hundreds of millions of dollars into tech companies in a little town in California people were calling Silicon Valley. I went to one of my buddies who was a startup entrepreneur. We had this idea for a Crazy Egg 2.0. It was called Kissmetrics. And my friend offered me a friends and family round of $600,000. He was willing to write a $25,000 check and reach out to a few of his friends to try to get more money, and then I would have to reach out to other people to fill up the rest of the round. But here's the kicker. I actually wanted more than $600,000. I knew from my experience with Crazy Egg, money can go really fast, even if you count all your pennies. I actually wanted $1 million. So I took that term sheet, I went to Silicon Valley and pitched a lot of venture capital firms to give me more cash. As I shopped around the term sheet, I was able to get $1 million. And roughly after a year, those investors helped me get another $3 million. So in total, I had $4 million. What I learned throughout that whole process is when an investor tells you no just means not right now. See, that investor who gave us a check for $1 million, I actually pitched him Crazy Egg. And when I pitched him Crazy Egg, they said no. But they're willing to fund Crazy Egg 2.0, which was called Kissmetrics. So when someone tells you no, don't take that as a no, just take that as not right now. Get feedback from them, improve upon those things, and then go back to them. But of course, the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship continues. Since right as we were starting to break even and almost get profitable, we got sued. There was an article on Wired magazine that was being published. It was saying that we're sharing our data in our analytics platform between companies. So for example, if you're Macy's, they were saying I was sharing that data with Nordstrom's. The FTC slapped us with an investigation, but we passed with flying colors. At the same time though, we had a class action lawsuit, and our lawyer told us it's actually cheaper in many cases to settle than it is to have that ego and show that you beat someone in court. What we ended up doing was swallowing our ego and settling. And eventually, we were able to get this done for just a measly $50,000, which we used the money on the company's balance sheet. And the insurance company paid for the rest of the settlement, which was roughly $450,000. In business, there's gonna be some times where you feel that your ego's just getting squashed on and you feel like you have no pride. You gotta do what's best for the business, not what's best for your feelings. But even after the settlement, the company never fully recovered. The investors put in a new CEO, and the CEO was terrible. He even paid his girlfriend $50,000 to redo our logo at one point. And over time, they kept making decisions like that, and the company started running out of money. And eventually, owning very little to nothing of the company, I decided to walk away and focus on bootstrapping instead of leveraging investor dollars. At this point, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I enjoyed teaching, so I just went all in on content. I grew my audience from 0 visitors to 1 million on my website and over 1 million followers between all my social media profiles combined. The way I did this was I continued to produce tons of educational content that people were used to paying for, and I gave it all away for free. By giving away a lot of amazing information for free that people are used to paying for, you can quickly build up an audience because you're offering much more value than what you're asking for. This is why I was also named one of the top marketers in the world by Forbes, or one of the top influencers in the world by the Wall Street Journal. It even felt great that I was getting recognized by people, and it taught me if you want to really build up your audience, you can't do so by just taking a picture. Those followers, those visitors, they don't monetize well. To do well, you have to give a lot of value in a big market, a market where people are willing to spend a lot of money for. For example, people aren't willing to spend that much money for you to make them laugh. but they're willing to spend a lot of money for software solutions like Salesforce or Microsoft. And what I decided to do with that audience was sell informational products. I started selling courses that would teach people how to grow their traffic just like I did. And even though I was giving away so much of my information for free, I found that packaging up information in an easy, digestible format and giving them calls to hold people accountable, it caused people to be willing to spend money for that. But these info products that I was giving never generated more than $600,000 a month in revenue. And I didn't like that model because I couldn't figure out how to make it scale into a bigger company. Plus, no one was willing to buy a company that was tied to a personal brand like mine. You can build up your personal brand, and that's great, but people aren't willing to buy a company with a huge multiple when it's too reliant on a personal brand versus a corporate brand like Coca-Cola. Most people don't even know who runs Coca-Cola, but that brand is worth billions of dollars. As a founder, sometimes you have to follow the demand and what people are saying. And what people said to me is they didn't want my courses. They actually rather have paid me to do the marketing for them. And this is why I decided to start another agency called NP Digital, where we just did the marketing for people instead of them paying us for advice. And it was actually my roommate who finally made me take the first step in finding that perfect vehicle. I was getting thousands of emails a day from people reading and watching and consuming my content. And my roommate came up with the idea of partnering with other ad agencies for a revenue share. So what we were doing is we were sending other agencies leads, and in exchange, they were giving us a revenue share. Now, I had an issue that I said to my roommate. If people were pissed off, I didn't want them to hate me because that would tarnish my brand. So we created a clause where if people were unhappy with the agencies we were referring leads to, they would have to give the client a full refund. And we quickly got up to $500,000 a month in income from our revenue share, which was pretty much pure profit. But then we realized that revenue didn't make any sense based on the number of leads that we were referring out. Since my blog was getting 6 million visitors and we were generating over 30,000 leads a month, we knew that the other agencies had a terrible close rate, which meant tons of revenue was being left on the table. We couldn't figure out how to get the other agencies to close better, and it was our final straw. And this is why we started our own agency. And as a founder, you need to know your numbers like the back of your hand. Something may seem good, but when you look at the numbers, you can find things that are wrong and adjust so that way you can improve even more. For example, it doesn't matter how many leads you're getting. What matters is your close rate, your revenue, your lifetime value of your customer. So once we started an ad agency, it immediately did very well. But there was a single secret to success that took it to over 9 figures a year in revenue. So we did 5 million in our first year and we roughly broke even. Second year, 18.6 million in revenue with 1.1 in profit. And our third year, we did 32 million in revenue and 8.8 million in profit. And we kept doubling and growing, and the business really exploded. I was speaking at conferences, I was generating tens and thousands of leads a month, and my co-founder was really good at sales. That's what helped us get to the first 10 million a year in revenue. But it wasn't what actually pushed us into 9 figures, because you can have a huge brand and get tons of leads and even tons of sales. But if you can't keep clients and create recurring revenue, then you'll flatline. Your real job as a founder is to hire people who are amazing and have done it before. Fast forward to today, we're well into the 9 figures in revenue, we're profitable, and very little of my revenue comes from my personal brand, Neil Patel. It comes from hiring amazing people. See, I always thought as an entrepreneur to do well, you gotta be smart and amazing like Elon Musk. But even if you look at Elon or Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, none of them are the sole reason the company is doing well. Look at the leadership that they've put in place. And it took me so many years to learn that. I'm not at the caliber of Elon or Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, and I never will be. I don't have the intellect that they do. But the thing that's helped me do well and make all my money is hire people who have continually gone promotions, who have worked for my competitors. If you enjoyed listening to my story, check out this video on how you can dominate against the competition with AI in 2025.